Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you today from the Oklahoma Youth Expo, where it's been an exciting week of preparation and competition for young people from around our state. We begin this week talking about the new Farm Bill. SUNUP's Dave Deacon sat down with Congressman Frank Lucas, chairman of the House Ag Committee, in his office in Washington, D.C.
It has been 8 years since the last Farm Bill left Capitol Hill. The 2014 Farm Bill took a little bit different approach.
Because this bill is predicated on choices. You get to pick what's appropriate for your farm, your ranch, for you. The old direct payments, for instance, in the commodity title, go away. We replace it with an insurance type system that addresses both drought, weather, and addresses markets, price failures. You've got to make a decision. Do you want to go the crop revenue program, ARC, which will probably be very popular in the Midwest amongst corn and bean farmers? Or do you want to look at the PLC, the price protection program as I call it, which will be, I think, very popular among wheat farmers in our region. It'll be popular among peanut producers and rice producers and a whole bunch of other people, but you've got to make a decision. And that decision you make will last for the 5-year life of the Farm Bill. So you need to have as many facts. You need to think about this before you do it.
Even when it comes to the pace of Congress, this bill took the long route.
From the first hearing until the signing of the bill was about a 4-year period. We began the legislative process, actually in committee, crafting the new Farm Bill essentially 2.5 years ago. So this has been discussed and ground on and looked at and battled over and fought over. That's a good thing. Sometimes legislation that's done in a hurry looks like it's done in a hurry and requires a never-ending stream of fixes, corrections, and adjustments. Now, that's not to say this legislation is perfect, because after all, even the Constitution has been amended a good many times, so nothing's perfect. But I think we've got a good workable piece of legislation.
All of that while trying to weave its way through the legislative branch in a tighter economy.
This was a tough Farm Bill to write, because we had to spend dramatically less money for the next 5 years than we did comparably to the last 5-year Farm Bill. We did that, $23 billion less. And we had to make savings in all commodity groups, or sorry, I should say all regions, all sections of the Farm Bill. We weren't just going to pick on farmers. Everybody needed to help achieve savings, a part of addressing the national debt and the annual deficit. And we did that. The choices that are in there were designed so as to give producers a stronger safety net. There were those I served with who wanted to say, well, let's just let everybody be a part of everything. Well, it's just like everything else in life. If you're automatically a part of everything, then that means the value of what you get is going to be less. And by making choices, your safety net will be more robust, be stronger, be better for you in the future. I would just say this: it is a dramatic change in many areas, and I understand it, including dairy policy. But good men and women in the House and the Senate, with input from folks all over this country, tried very hard with the resources that were available to us to craft the strongest possible safety net. I believe that will be the case, and I think producers, once they've thought through the final rules and regulations, will be able to make good, solid decisions. They'll do the right thing and be able to work with that over the course of the next 5 years. But man, it shouldn't have been this hard to pass a bill to make sure we had the ability to raise enough food to feed ourselves. It shouldn't have been this hard.
With so many new faces in Congress, it took a little time to educate the new members about the potential Farm Bill.
When we got ready to count heads, to do a whip check, so to speak, to bring the Farm Bill to the floor in the summer of 13, it dawned on me that almost half the body hadn't been around for the '08 Farm Bill. They'd not been there for the debates, the amendment discussion, the votes. They'd not been members of Congress to listen to what their constituents had to say, both good and bad, after the previous Farm Bill, I should say, was passed. That reinventing the wheel is a challenge. And whether it is life at the dinner table, or life in the family business, or life on the family farm, even in Congress, it matters knowing why we got to this point. Having been there to experience both what didn't work and should be avoided, and what did work and should be reinforced and continued. Experience matters. When I was a teenager, I might have thought differently, but you know, both my grandfathers and my father have now passed away. I've come to realize they were pretty wisdom-filled old gentlemen, all of them.
In Washington, D.C., I'm Dave Deacon.
Joining us now is Jody Camnpiche, our Ag Policy Specialist. And Jody, the Congressman talked about producers having a choice between those two key commodity programs. Tell us a little bit more about making that decision.
Yes, in the 2014 Farm Bill, producers will have the choice between a price loss coverage program or price protection program and a revenue protection program called the Ag Risk Coverage Program. One protects drops in price, one protects both a drop in prices and yields. And producers will need to make that decision on a commodity by commodity and farm by farm basis.
And what type of information do I need to start pulling together as I'm trying to make the right decision?
Well, right now, we still probably have quite a bit of time to make the decision. OSU Extension will be putting together lots of decision tools, fact sheets, information, tools so that producers can actually enter information about their own farms to determine which commodity program may be a better choice for their operations.
And does the commodity program vary by crop?
Yes, it does vary by crop. The revenue protection program may work better for some crops, like maybe corn or soybeans. The price protection program may work better for other crops, like maybe wheat. But at this point, it's still a little too early to tell which program is really the best option for each crop.
And because this is so new, everything's still unfolding and we're in the interpretation process, how is implementation going to unfold? Do we kind of have a timeline yet?
There's not a strict timeline in place yet, but probably by late summer, USDA may have rolled out their implementation guidelines for the Farm Service Agency for these programs. Right now, those guidelines are not in place, which means that there's a few things about each of the programs that could change by the time that the implementation gets underway. But sign-up will likely be delayed. Generally, producers get to enroll in these programs by June of each year. It'll likely be delayed till fall of 2014.
And there is a sign-up coming up soon in April. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, the first program that will be implemented is the Livestock Disaster Assistance Program, and particularly for Oklahoma, the Livestock Forage Disaster Program will be very important. Sign-up will start on or before April 15th, and it'll go back and cover losses for 2012 and 2013. So producers need to make sure that they stop by their local Farm Service Agency office and make sure their records are up to date for those past losses.
Okay, Jody Camnpiche, thanks for sorting it all out for us. We'll see you again soon.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Last weekend, we were treated to rain across most of Oklahoma. Locations in a wide band from Waurika to Ada to Sallisaw received 2 to 3 inches of rain. Those are the dark green areas on our rainfall map. Most places in the lighter green map areas received close to 1.5 inches. The areas colored blue on the map had less than an inch, and unfortunately, the panhandle was left out completely. On a map of soil moisture change at 10 inches, the soils that received the most benefit from last weekend's rain are colored green. Another new option for looking at soil moisture is Mesonet's new percent plant available water. Plant available water is the amount of water crops and landscape plants can draw from the soil column. When a soil has 100% of its plant available water at the beginning of spring, it's like having a full tank of gas to start a long trip. A percent plant available water map for the surface down to 16 inches from the day before last weekend's rain showed the state split in about half between the wetter areas colored a green shade and the drier areas colored yellow or brown. After the rain, we see more areas colored dark green in that 90 to 100% soil moisture range. As expected, we see no change in the panhandle areas and only slight improvement in western areas of Oklahoma. Another part of rain events in the spring and fall is the cold air that sweeps in behind the rain. On Monday morning, March 17th, air temperatures fell into the 20s across most of Oklahoma. The Burbank and Oilton Mesonet sites dropped all the way down to 18. Radiational cooling was enhanced by low wind speeds. A map of wind from 7:45 on Monday morning showed that most Oklahoma locations had calm winds with wind speeds below 5 miles per hour. Burbank and Oilton, the coldest locations, recorded no wind. They were at 0. Tuesday, March 18th, brought warmer air temperatures, but it also delivered clouds of dust from intense winds. At 7:20 Tuesday night, Hooker-colored purple came in with an average wind speed of 41 miles per hour. Winds blew hard across western Oklahoma, blowing up dust and driving it into central Oklahoma. Drought-designated areas have been expanding in Oklahoma so far this year. The Southwest remains in exceptional drought classification D4. That is the highest drought level. The red areas are considered in extreme drought D3. D2, the orange areas, fall into the severe drought category. Central Oklahoma is in moderate drought, tan. Yellow areas indicate abnormally dry conditions. This coming week, we could see some wetter conditions and cooler temperatures. Let's hope that happens. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Mesonet Weather Report.
Joining us once again, Darrell Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. Darrell, these past few weeks we've had quite a run in the cattle markets. Kind of take us through what's gone on.
Well, you know, back in January we had a big run up in fed cattle and wholesale box beef prices due to the storms at that time, the post-holiday period, and we thought those records probably were things that we wouldn't touch again for a while. But again in March, once again we see that the underlying tight supplies, continued bad weather, it just has caused another run. So as of this, last week or so, we set new records once again for both the wholesale box beef as well as the fed cattle price.
Let's change species and talk about hogs. The PED virus has really taken a bit of effect. Walk us through that market.
You know, this is kind of the new thing on the horizon here, with the PED virus continuing pretty much unchecked at this point. They really don't have a handle on this disease. The supply effects that really go back to last summer when the disease broke out are now showing up in the market with reduced slaughter. And we're now year to date down on pork production. Just a couple months ago, we thought pork production would be up a couple percent for this year. So the pork market now is beginning to respond with these very fast run-ups in both the hog prices as well as the pork cutout values, much somewhat similar to the beef complex, and they're certainly playing off of each other at this point.
All right, so we've talked beef, we've talked hogs. What's going on with chicken?
Well, the third meat in the meat complex is poultry. The poultry industry ramped up production in the last part of 2013 in anticipation of strong beef prices at that time. Now we've got strong pork prices. You'd think chicken would be part of this scenario, and yet as yet we have not seen a lot of reaction on the poultry side. Relatively weak wholesale prices for most of the poultry products. It looks like we're beginning to see some response there, and I certainly would expect to see some response as we go forward. But we're really seeing kind of a lag in the poultry demand in response to that, and so it's not participating in this rally so much at this point.
All right, let's turn that back to cattle. What does all this mean for the feeder cattle market?
Well, we've had feeder cattle prices at very strong levels since last fall. We've moved to new higher levels again recently this spring for both the calves and the heavyweight feeder cattle. These higher prices all the way up to the wholesale level and increasingly into the retail level helps justify those prices. It makes them more feasible in the industry in terms of the margins. And so, we're going to move forward with these very strong prices. It really depends on the weather the next couple of months. If we have what looks like good forage conditions developing, then we're going to continue to see very strong demand for calves from a stocker standpoint, for heifers from a replacement standpoint, and so we'll continue to see these very strong cattle prices for the foreseeable future.
All right, well, that's good news. Darrell Peel, livestock marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
For those spring calving herds that are going to have some replacement heifers that they're going to put through their first breeding season, that'll probably happen within about a month to a month and a half from now. That serves as a reminder that we need to keep those replacement heifers on a good growing plane of nutrition into and through the breeding season. You see, there was some research done here at Oklahoma State University back in about 2000 where they looked at the impact of what happens to yearling replacement heifers if the nutrition is dropped dramatically right at the time of the start of the breeding season. What they had was basically 20 heifers, all of which they knew by taking blood samples were cycling. They were on a good growing program. It was about 20% more than what they needed to maintain their body weight. At the time of the start of the trial, half of the heifers were put on a restricted diet where they received only 40% of what they needed to maintain their weight. And that basically means they got 1/3 as much feed as the other heifers. In 2 weeks' time, those heifers went from 100% cycling down to only 30% cycling of those that were on that restricted diet. We need to make sure that our heifers stay and maintain a good growing diet into and through the breeding season. One of the places where that could be a problem is if we've been growing heifers on some wheat pasture and then we decide to move them up towards a headquarters area to do our AI or even our natural breeding program and put them out on dormant range where we have a significant change in diet. That can be a real problem. So think about this. Or if we're going to move those heifers, let's make sure that they're getting enough energy and enough protein to continue to grow into and through the breeding season. That way we should have a much better result of getting a higher percentage of those heifers bred early in the breeding season, and will do a good job for you as they go on through their productive lives. Hey, we'll visit with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Joining us now is Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. And Kim, wheat and canola prices continue to go up. What's going on?
Yeah, we've had a really good run in wheat prices, about $1.80 since early February. You look at that July contract price, it's up near $7.80. If it can close above $7.81 2 consecutive days, then $8 will be the next target. That contract also has price support down at $7.58. You can forward contract wheat for harvest delivery for 40 cents below that July contract price, or somewhere around $7.40 right now. If you look at cash wheat prices, they're running around $7.60 if some producers still have wheat in a bin.
And in terms of canola, what are we seeing?
Oh, we've seen $1.45 to $1.60 in the forward contract offer for canola prices. And that's just over the last 3 weeks, so a really good run up in canola prices. Forward contract in canola somewhere around $8.60 to $8.80 a bushel.
And with spring here, Kim, it's not too early to think about harvest and, of course, yield potentials.
Yeah, the yield potential has diminished in both canola and wheat because of the freeze damage and the drought conditions. You know, it's dry out there. You look over a good part of Oklahoma, you go all the way down to 32 inches. There's a shortage of soil moisture, so it's going to take rain. You know, we need 10 to 12 inches just to get back to even, but timely rains of ½ inch to an inch will, you know, could get us some good yields. But right now we're probably 20% down in canola, and who knows how much down in wheat, but wheat is in poor condition.
And on the flip side of that, what if it does rain?
Well, if it rains, then you know it's going to turn good. Wheat is a resilient plant, as is canola. Those yields could increase, but I think it is reduced the amount. You know, we can still produce an average crop, but we're not going to produce probably a record crop. The odds are that it's going to be below average right now.
And with all this in mind, should producers be forward contracting right now?
I'd probably forward contract anywhere from 10 to 25%, but not more than 25%, because if it doesn't rain, prices are going to continue to go up. If it rains, they're going to go down.
Okay, Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. Thanks a lot.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk a little bit about troubleshooting the charging system on small engines.
So what we're going to do is show you a simple way to check them out. And one of the first things you want to do is to check your battery. And we've shown you how to do that before, but what you can do is you put your leads on your battery, and you can see this is reading at like 1264. And if you load this, that doesn't mean that your battery's good. If you put a load on that, that can drop down to a real low voltage. It's the amperage that we're wanting to crank with. And if we're going to check our charging system, then we're going to see if this climbs up to, say, 13.5 volts. If it doesn't make 13.5 volts, we're not going to be able to charge our battery. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, give it a little throttle. So you saw us start the unit up, and you saw that it started fine, and the voltage came back up a little bit. We started out like 14.4 something, and we dropped down, and then it came up a little bit. But when we were running and we brought the throttle up, you could see that we weren't gaining any more voltage, and so we need to have 13.5 volts to charge that battery.
So if the alternator's not functioning correctly, it's not going to be putting the amperage back into the battery that's going to allow us to keep running over time. And so we'll gradually, it may start, but the battery now is powering the whole system, and it will gradually draw the battery down until the next time it won't start.
So now he needs to dig into the alternator and see what the problem is there, and either replace it or find out what components are bad in it.
So that's just a little tip for troubleshooting the charging system on small engine type systems. We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
Joining us now is Soleil Tagvian, our new extension irrigation specialist, and we want to talk a little bit today about irrigation's scheduling. And Soleil, what kind of questions are you getting from farmers from around the state about setting up irrigation operations or kind of planning for their farm and their needs?
Well, the two important questions when it comes to irrigation scheduling is the timing of irrigations and then determining how much water to apply. And with irrigation requiring water, obviously, and energy, it would be very beneficial to our producers if they can decide if they can wait maybe a few more days before they apply water and they use the energy to apply the water.
And there's lots of different methods, but you want to talk about one in particular today.
Absolutely, that's correct. As you mentioned, there are different methods. We have methods based on canopy temperature, and we have wonderful tools and information available on Mesonet website. And we also have methods based on soil moisture sensors. So we basically measure how much water we have available in the root zone of crops, and then based on the water that's available, we decide if it's time to irrigate or not.
And you have some examples of those today, so let's take a look at the first one you have to show us.
Yes, this is what we call a tensiometer. This particular one is 36 inches long, so this can be installed in the field. At the bottom tip of the sensor there is a porous ceramic cap, and this cap comes into equilibrium with the soil. So this would be installed, this part of the sensor would be out of the ground, and this is at 36 inches depth. Now the reservoir here is filled with water, and as the porous cup comes into equilibrium with the soil, if there is a soil water deficit, it's going to drain some water from this reservoir, and we're going to see a negative number here, which represent a soil water suction here. This next type is again similar because it has a porous cup here which comes into equilibrium with the soil water content. Inside this porous cup there is a heating element that sends a thermal pulse, and then there is a thermocouple that measures that thermal pulse. And based on the changes in the temperature inside this porous cup, we can estimate how much water is available inside this cup and in the soil surrounding it. The next type of sensor is again very similar. We have a porous medium here, and there are two electrodes, and these two electrodes that are embedded here they measure the electrical resistance, which is also a function of soil moisture. So the larger the resistance, the smaller the soil water content.
And these two look sort of similar.
They are based on what we call a capacitance principle. And what they do, they send a electromagnetic field, and the frequency of this field depends on water content in the soil.
And how do you choose what's right for your operation?
That's a wonderful question. When it comes to soil moisture sensors, there are many different types of sensors and they provide different numbers. These sensors, for example, provide a measure of how tight the water is held by soil particles. These sensors provide a measure of a volumetric water content. So to select the best type of sensor, you really need to have a good knowledge of the soil type in that particular field of interest, the type of the soil, the type of the sensor, the number that you're interested to get from these sensors, the type of the crop and how sensitive the crop is to water stress, and also some cost, because these sensors cost very differently.
A lot of range there.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go, we want to mention that today is a significant day, March 22nd, World Water Day. Tell us a little bit about that, an event you have planned coming up on the OSU campus.
Yes, World Water Day has been celebrated for the past 10 years by hundreds of organizations and educational institutions. And we have organized a 2-hour seminar to kind of talk about the interconnection between water and energy, how we need energy to be able to apply water and extract it, and how we need water for producing energy.
And that's Monday on the OSU campus?
Yes.
Okay. Saleh Tagvian, thank you very much. Terrific information, and we'll see you again soon.
Good to be here.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and other social media. From the 2014 Oklahoma Youth Expo, I'm Lyndall Stout. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.